Hey, what's going on, everyone? Just wanted to let you guys know this will be a video with Wesley and I talking. We had a pretty extensive conversation, just kind of going through all the frustrations that everybody's been experiencing this year. He reached out to me, kind of recognizing that, man, people are getting really frustrated with communication. They're getting really frustrated with payments, and kind of the accuracy of the portal and portal issues in general. So, yeah, we're gonna jump into a Zoom recording here, and yeah, you'll hear more from him. All right, so we're online now. Um, Everyone, for those watching, Wesley reached out to me to kind of hopefully bring to light, you know, and open a channel of communication to those interested in this program and those involved in the program. There's definitely been some communication challenges at the beginning of this year, so he reached out to me as just kind of trying to combat that issue and just have an open discussion about some of the issues going on. So yeah, Wesley, take it away, man.
Yeah, well, no, I just like first off tell you thank you. You don't have to do this, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do it. You've kind of become a unofficial spokesperson, I feel like, but I appreciate what you do by putting honest stuff out there and giving people a place to respond. So that's been cool. I really hadn't followed it that much, and then recently people started talking about it a little bit. And I know we did a video a couple months ago, a few months ago. Um, but so then people started mentioning it, and I was like, you know what, we probably should just get something out there. I think communication is the one place where I feel that we should have done a lot better. Not that there's a lot of issues out there, but I think communicating, answering questions, I'm an open book, but I feel like too, it gets a little cut off when, people are getting segments of information. So, in the future, we have a goal, and I have a goal of trying to have, some type of monthly, Q&A or whatever it may be to try to get better information out there just on a general speaking. But I thought that it was important to address a few of the issues head on. And again, like I told you, I'm an open book. So anything you want to ask, good, bad, or indifferent, I'm here for it. We're not going anywhere. Just because there's challenges, I think the big important things, how we're going to respond to them. We've been in business a long time, so the business challenges, I'm super confident in. It's the communication and the little things that have fallen through the cracks as a result of that we're working to get better at as a whole. So, man, I'm an open book. Like I said, anything you think that would be important to go into, or I could go into a few of those things directly. I know you said you had a few questions ready.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to stay on the topic of communications,
Yeah.
I mean, I think going about that, obviously the method now is in kind of what's been in place. It's been nice because we've had fairly open channels of communication with you. Like we can talk to the boss and get questions answered. But as more and more, I mean, how many investors total are you like? How many investors do you have an open line of communication with?
About 60.
Yeah, so that's a lot of people to manage. Like
Yeah.
I lead a church group with 20 people, and that is a challenge in itself. So it's like 60
Yeah.
people, hounding you about minute details, probably takes a lot of your time away from going out and making sure the business is running successfully. Um, so yeah, I can understand how that might be flawed. It was nice to begin with.
Absolutely.
We've probably gotten to a size where it's not sustainable, and something's got to change.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'll hit that nail right on the head. Is You're exactly right. And I think the volume maybe wasn't necessarily the biggest issue. I think it's as far as the number of people, yes, that contributes to it substantially when everyone has a question. But it more so got to the point where when there were little communication issues, hey, I need this or I need that, or my portal was messed up. And we can go into the portal probably in a different question later, but um, it was the WhatsApp. I've always been out there. Groups were out there, and most of the time I was not involved in those. But when it got to a point where hey, Wesley's the only one with the answer, I started getting added in every single one of those, and people were messaging me, and I love that, like you said, and I have that approach with our drivers. Every driver at the company's got my cell phone, right, and typically only hear from them when it's a problem, and that's fine. That's what it kind of supposed to be for. Um, and if they've got an issue, I would rather them feel like they have a line, use their channels to get there, right, as best they can. But if they don't feel like they're being heard or they get a problem that immediately needs to come to me, they will send me a text or call me, and they always get a response. And I'd put that out there for any of the guys to tell me. Same thing in this exact scenario. I love that everyone can reach out to me and have responses. It's when, I didn't know, I think at the period of time that some of these communications and email and other things had not gotten a timely response. And they were probably putting that on me to come up with a good response. It was something specific about the operations or specific about the truck. And all of those kind of started hitting at one time early this year. And, not only is it, you know, when I was sick for about 3 weeks, I, slowest period of our year, ice storm had just hit, which we're not hiding behind that, but issues build up, new software, all these things that we had to continue the operation. It was literally like triage and, in battle, even though this is nowhere near a battle, right? But it's a business and it's its own living beast. It's triage what needs to be fixed today to make sure that the functioning of the company keeps going. And in that, some people didn't get replies in a timely manner from me, timely manner from other guys. And it just kind of backed up to a point where it's really hard to keep up with. I know I mentioned, but when I go home on a normal day a year ago, I'd have 5 or 6 unread text messages. I'm super, responsive in email typically, and didn't even use WhatsApp a little over a year ago for almost anything. Now I'll go home with 40, 50 unread texts, 10, 15 WhatsApp messages, and a group of emails. And I'll try after I go home, I try to force myself to spend some time with the kids because they need that, and that's what life's all about. Yep. And then once they go to bed, I'll usually fall asleep on my computer at night. A lot of that is work with the business, or it's work with this, or getting statements together, especially prior to January. Starting in January in the new software, Retta's been able to kind of take that over from generating it. But in the new software, we had to go back and vet all the information, vet all the data. There were tons of changes, tons of errors. And, when a driver, just simple stuff like when a driver has a fuel card, when we went into the new software, we had to assign fuel cards to trucks. They've always been for 11 years assigned to the driver. But because of making sure the fuel stays with whose trucks owns what and operates, and that expense stays there, we had guys jump around trucks when there'd be a breakdown or whatever would happen. And we had to redo all of that. So not only that, but how some of the expenses flow through. And then I would go through and literally sift through every single line item on every single statement. So said that to say, bad time for a lot of things. And it was Murphy's Law. I was talking with someone this week that, you look up Murphy's Law and there's probably a picture of exactly kind of how we've been. Trucking's always like one of those things. There's always something happening. We're always putting out a fire with 5%. Yeah, that's it. We're always putting out a fire with 5% of the fleet that takes up, probably 80% of the time from a high level, right? Operations is dealing in the weeds every day. But that's kind of how the first of this year went. And it was unfortunate. It's in a slow season for us. I know I talked on a lot of videos last year about the seasonality of flatbed. I would say it was probably even slower and worse than what we usually are accustomed to. But really, Thanksgiving all the way through January is pretty miserable typically. January is a coin flip. The first week of January is always miserable. We had the ice storm that shut, a bunch of guys down for a week in January. February started off a little bit slower, but everything has started to pick up now. And we could talk a little bit more specific about that. But from a timing and communication standpoint, all of these things built up. All of them fell back on me to get an answer because we had not set up a good path in Rangeway for other people to have understand the model and be involved with the people and confident to go have the conversations, but then B to know, hey, where do I go dig out, a contract issue or a portal issue or whatever, right? So if they were getting all the questions and they still were having to re-ask some of them because they weren't involved, as they have nothing to do with the portals, nothing to do with anything except running the trucks and the expenses associated with the trucks. So I think we've now gotten a better place. As time keeps going on with the software, Retta will be able to dominate that whole process, and it will be expedited once we get everything in. We've had issues with some of the APIs with fuel cards. Some of the APIs is supposed to push over because all the payroll stuff's done in the same software, but only portions of the payroll are being automatically pushed over. So again, there's some manual stuff still going on, tons of checking things, but we will get to a point with that where statements will be ready early. We're just not there yet. And so all that combined, we're still having to run a trucking company we're selling to make sure and maximize as much revenue as we can, expedite the breakdowns when they happen, because we've had a bigger rash of breakdowns in the cold months this year than normal. Usually it's really just one spell when temperature changes to get cold, and one spell when it gets warmer, and it's mostly tires and little things. But we've had a few more of that. And to that end, we hired Tommy internally that does breakdown calls, not only nights, weekends. He helped get a guy off the side of the road, saved a $1,200 tow bill this weekend, by answering a phone call on a Sunday and coming up Sunday night. It just happens it was a battery connection issue, right? He takes it off, cleans it a little bit, and puts them back on, and everything's good. Just in the last week, he's probably saved $3,000 or $4,000 fleet wide, just by being somebody that's an expert in his field and maintenance and repairs. But he's also in there running the shop guys to make sure that parts we're getting the best discount, and limited downtime is the big thing, right? Warranties cover a lot of stuff, but it's the little stuff that we can help expedite, do the preventative stuff in a better manner. And but the downtime is where people see it, right? If your truck's down for 2 weeks, it loses revenue, versus having an expense of most of the expense, right, of a breakdown. You may have small items here or there. Or, we had a $4,500 invoice with someone last week that the warranty paid like $3,000 of, and they still had to pay $1,500, and that's significant. But there was no way around it. We fought, did everything we could. So catch-22 there. You win some and you lose some, but we've got someone now that's their entire job is focused and dedicated on that. So we have been improving these things. He started about, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks ago, somewhere in there. So I think, a good time. But when we started seeing, okay, there's more demand, we've got more trucks now. That role is hired specifically to help save asset owners money and downtime.
Yep.
We're paying for that out of our operations, out of our percentage of the money, because we see the value that it saves every individual asset owner of having somebody in that. Nobody's getting back charged for Tommy, right? It's a necessary piece of us providing a really good and a better product as these trucks, run over the road and run thousands and thousands of miles. Anything can happen. They're still a moving truck. They got tons of tiny little parts. Sensors are 90% of the problem we deal with. They're these little electronic pieces of stuff that everyone added the past 15 years on big trucks. But
Sensors go
kind
bad.
of jumped around a little bit there. What's that?
No, sensors go bad. I get it.
Yeah, and that's it. And usually it puts a truck down. And you speak to timing and things that necessarily there aren't great answers for, but most of the time you put one of these trucks in a shop now, if it's got to be done at the shop for a warranty type thing. Used to, it was 3 to 5 days to get a truck out of the shop or get it diagnosed and out of the shop. Now it's 2 weeks just to get it diagnosed. So that's when we're having to go and look at different methods of, is it cheaper for us to tow it to a different shop and things. I know I talked about some last year. Far more important now than it used to be, because the shops are slow. Shops are charging $100 an hour more than they charged a year and a half ago. So there's some things we battle there, and I just thought having someone dedicated to that. But all those things kind of pile up in we're in a what I would call maybe medium-sized business now, even though we're still a small business by trade. Those things start being far more important. So us being able to address those took time away, and I think communications went down. I'm trying to personally go back and tell people, hey, I will find you an answer. It may take me 2 days, but I'm going to try. And I know there's a couple people that have a payout missing, from December, or skipped one somehow or something. Most of the time that means the truck had an issue, or a truck was down, or we were swapping a driver or something. But they deserve an answer on that, no matter what it is. And if it was zero, tell them it was zero, show them it was zero, and move on. And we failed in some of that, in some of the rush and problems, and me being able to catch all the communications. I went back this past weekend and found somebody had WhatsApp messaged me 2 weeks ago. And the other thing is my WhatsApp says I'm online all the time because I keep it on my desktop. And so people think I'm online, and they'll just, send 4 or 5 messages. Well, if your WhatsApp is open, it doesn't tell you have unread messages. You have to scroll through there and find where the people have unread. Yep. And so I found that to be, a little bit of an issue, but I found one that was, 35 messages down that I'd missed. And I went and told him, hey, I'm sorry, missed this. Going into the weekend, I'll figure it out. And hopefully we get that fixed quickly because we're going to have to go back and dig up all that information. But as a whole, on communication, we're trying now this ticketing system to try to triage that someone's always watching the messages, but triage the, if you want to call it a tier one problem. I didn't get paid. I'm missing a profit and loss completely, or I had a breakdown and, I have an issue or a question about that or whatever it was for my last month, to try to get those to me where I can try to respond and have an answer either directly to the asset owner or to the person doing the communications, which right now is probably going to be a combination of a couple of people to stay on top of it. But to get an answer more quickly on those things, we could probably now dive into the portal, because I know there's tons of questions about the portal that have come out. So that's a good segue. But then the portal questions of, hey, my numbers just don't look right and something's off, probably a tier 2 problem, right? It's not the world's on fire, but it needs to be fixed within 3, 4, 5 days. The portals started getting information out, and somehow we've changed it 2 or 3 times on how we put information and data into there in an attempt to improve it over time. How we put data in there has changed a couple of times. We went from me sending a PDF P&L statement to the guys and they'd take the data off of that and do it. We went from me sharing spreadsheets to them with all the data on it and they'd do it, to they created a Google sheet that the data is supposed to feed automatically to the back end, and I would copy and paste the data into this, hand key it all in for everyone, and that was supposed to pop into the portals. Then when I started hearing the big problems, right, of, well, my payout was different than my P&L. That's a huge problem.
Yeah.
But the flip side is we were trying to, the portal is something we want to provide as a value add, right? It's probably not a requirement. We could send the PDF P&Ls to everyone every month, and I think that would be a good starting point. At least this is the data. It matches exactly what was over there. There was no having to copy and paste it somewhere to add human error in for an opportunity for it to change or be incorrect. But if it was incorrect, then something else was going on. We still have to go hand key it into the bank, but in theory, that would be, the least path of resistance. But we want to provide this portal because I think it's a value add, and we want to grow that to where there's tools and functions in it down the road that are even better than we all think about now. But when we went to that and I saw, okay, maybe they got paid the right amount, but they were clicking a drop down and their P&L wasn't there anymore, the PDF copy, it just quit generating it. So they'd gone to rely on that. We started getting tons of questions. I can't see the PDF one, whatever. Well, then it started being, well, my portal doesn't have all my trucks in it, or my portal, what it says in the P&L doesn't match what's on the graph bars that show kind of the year to date and combine. And I honestly called them and I was like, pull everything down. I was like, send an email out, tell everyone, pull it down. In hindsight, that probably was like a bad idea because it looks like we're trying to like take away data. Yeah. That's not it at all. Your data I've still got P&Ls. I can screenshot where all the data that was originated. We've got backup data. If I had to go back a whole year and redo all this stuff, it would take forever. But if we ever lost everything, we can do that. That's the great news, right? We've got access to everything. But if we're putting something out there that's bad and we start losing faith, not only does it lose faith in us and what we're putting out there, but then, people were communicating and not getting an answer back quick enough because we kind of got inundated. It was like a waterfall effect of like, hey, there's a little small issue here. And small issues that could have been hey, we're going to get it fixed, weren't getting fixed. Then they weren't getting a reply. And I was just like, look, we've got this out there to be a value add. And if we're going to add value through it, it shouldn't cause more problems and it shouldn't cause people to lose trust. Yep. It just shouldn't. We kind of got with the back end dev guys a little bit. And they have a better plan. And there's some things that have changed now that we're going to attempt. But we're not publishing it to the portals until it's accurate. Right. Like that's the number one thing. And it's going to take some more time to verify that type stuff. Like it's already taken us more time to do P&Ls and statements. But I would rather put out a product that we know is accurate and there's no questions and things are accurate, because now if we get it right this month, it'll be a lot easier to get it next month and the next month. So we wanted to take a step back there to make sure that the information that's going out is good or consistent at least, right? I know the data is good that supports it, but it needs to be consistent. And, growing pains of there's not an easy way to do this. we had a lot of hope that my new software was going to be able to just API directly into these sheets that puts the data into the portal. It's not there yet. I think there's some add-on ways to do that. But I think we were kind of overpromised to people. Maybe at the software place didn't understand exactly what I was asking. They were comparing it to a owner operator that owns a truck and leases it on and puts their own driver in it. But in that scenario, that owner operator that owns the truck was paying the driver. The company wasn't still paying the driver. So it adds still some nuances in there where we're running two settlements on one truck, have to manually put the driver pay back over. So it's not all perfect. And then when it spits out data, it can spit it out in a CSV file. But when it's in there, it's not meant to be in a spreadsheet. And so when you go look at all the data, even with me to go in there and double check figures and check fuel totals with revenue, I have to it won't let me put formulas in the spreadsheet, right? Because the data is overlaid on the spreadsheet. It's not whatever. So I have to manually create, cell A plus cell B plus cell C and do all this stuff when I go and do all the calculations to double check everything before we put it on to then the P&Ls to go. So the portals are in a better place now than they were. It's still going to take some time to go back and fix some of the errors. They're working on a few of those. I know a few of those have already been corrected that had some like, hey, my back end didn't show this or whatever. But again, we were getting a message from not everyone, but from a small group of people every single day as if it should have been fixed the day before. And I think that's where it got to the point of, I don't know what to say anymore on the data, and me and the other guys, other than we've put it to the dev team and we're riding them to get it fixed, and they're doing their best to do it. But I think some of the fixes and the formulas that are behind the portal were a little bit more complex than they thought, and they had to go back and re-trigger some of those things. So it's not one of those things. It seems to me, uneducated, not a developer, it seemed to me like it should be a keystroke and everything was fixed. So I'm like everybody else. It should be a really easy fix, but it's just not. It's just not. Yeah. And so, I think that's been a huge sticking point with everyone is we log in the portal and we've not got great faith in it. So I think at very worst, we've committed that the P&L is going to be in a PDF form. Everyone's going to get it every month.
Until further notice.
And then we're going to, and we're going to be putting that into the portals. So when we turn them back on, all that data will be there. Mm-hmm. We're just not hitting go live on that again until everything's fixed. And again, if somebody has questions, we've had people reach out about specific stuff. Hey, how much did I make in X month? Or I'm missing something. We'll get that as quick as possible. But I hope everyone understands that it's not saying their question's not as important, but we're trying to triage the most important stuff first. Get to, hey, we need a replacement copy of a P&L or something. It may take a few days to get that. Hopefully not. But if we're triaging some of the other stuff, and with me, if I have to go dig it out, there's 1,000 other things that day of me trying to be focused to make sure that the trucks are successful and as far, as much revenue as possible, and moving some customers around and moving drivers around and all those things. It's not an excuse. It's reality. And I think we've seen some of the gaps there, and we're trying to improve in some other places that, I won't announce now, but some things we're working on that'll benefit communications and our overall Rangeway side of things. So good, the good news is everyone's going to have problems, and how we're judged is how we respond and fix those problems. Nothing happens really fast in trucking, but we're trying really hard to push some things like adding Tommy, adding Retta, doing these P&Ls. I think those things get better. There's issues outside of our control. It looks like it's on us, but the big one's been titling for people that bought option 3 and got titles. We've got probably 7 or 8 titles from last year total that are having issues. I got 3 of them back for someone that, and we've changed the model completely. If we ever go forward and add, option 3s, which we're not out there actively selling, but if someone came to us right now, we've got room for it. But we're trying to fix our problems before we're out there adding a whole bunch of extra ones. But we'll never on an option 3 let people pay us buy the truck on their behalf at the dealership and have to retitle it. It creates so much confusion now. Out the state of Alabama changed their titling process and went to a new software, and it's honestly dominated a whole bunch. I've been to our DMV a dozen times this year trying to get answers or file for lost titles or whatever. I finally got an answer yesterday on one of our partners that to transfer the name, because the title comes in Truckwise on the bill of sale said Truckwise, even though they've contracted us to buy it on their behalf. And so they're covered, documentation and contract wise. It comes in. Used to, I could go to the DMV, which I did it last year for a dozen people, and say, I want to transfer this title from my name to this LLC name. And they'd say, no problem. And they'd ship the titles off. Well, now the new process is, and we sent off this last group of titles. Nobody told us that process had changed to get the name change. Well, I received the same titles I sent off 6-8 weeks ago back with no alteration on them. Go straight to the DMV yesterday, and I'm told, well, no, you've got to have a statement of transfer, not a new bill of sale, and titles here literally with the sticky note from the DMV on it and how they want it changed. I have to have 2 witnesses witness that I am on behalf of Truckwise legally able to transfer it. And the fear there is this going to be a new bill of sale or is this whatever? So again, going forward, we're going to let them contract us to do and find the trucks if it happens, but people are just going to pay directly to the dealership for the trucks. It takes risk out for them, the confidence, because what it did for us is we lost some trust with a couple of people thinking that we were doing something with the titles. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do with someone's title. Or if I did, it's black and white all over everywhere that I went and tried to do something improper. And so it would be stupid to ever try. Mm-hmm. But when people don't hear and they don't have answers, and my response is it's in the state's hands. You go in the state's portal and you can't find, that information at all, even by the numbers that are on the title. It loses trust like I've got titles. But every time I get them, I try to take a picture of it. Yeah, I've taken pictures of the lady at the DMV and sent to people before because I don't know how else to say, like, hey, I'm doing this, the way it's supposed to be done, the way I'm being told. And it's a flawed process. They changed their software. Now that they've changed the rules at which they can transfer titles, it's made it way more complex and time's up, unfortunately. So again, little things are happening all the time that I think have dominated a lot of time. And so that's where we're working to improve is cut down the stuff that we can impact. And the way to cut that down would just be not to ever have it come in Truckwise name to help transfer it. So, I talked a lot. I know you got a few more questions there too, but I think it's important to address some of those things where everyone can see it at once. I can send a WhatsApp message or a text message to someone, but it really doesn't mean anything unless, like I always say, if you can see the whites in someone's eyes when they're telling you, right, you can look at them and see that, okay, there's a real person there. It's not me just messaging outer space and these people have flaked off and gone, Lord knows where. And I think part of that too, man, there's a lot of people that got screwed over in the past couple of years trying to do something like this. And I think that's unfortunate, but I think people come into it then with, okay, when I don't get a response in a timely manner, I'm that guy. I'm getting screwed. And I'll say this right now in front of anyone that watches it, we're going to have problems. There's going to be ebbs and flows in business. There's going to be ebbs and flows with individual trucks. There's going to be communication problems, hopefully not anymore. We're not going anywhere. If something comes after us, we'll fight it. I'm a fighter. We've fought it for over 11 years. Trucking's a hard industry. It's an overregulated industry. Even the state of Alabama is going after the trial attorneys this year, right? There's a lot of things that people trying to come after our industry, but it's a good industry. It's typically the first thing to improve when the economy is getting better, but the first thing to fall when it's worse. Last year, we're coming out of the worst freight year, and more companies shut down last year than any year in the history. So I feel like we're in a good spot now to head back up. Who knows if that happens? I'm seeing a lot of key factors out there that tell me it is happening, things that I watch as a whole and especially flatbed. But we're here, right? And I've heard a lot of horror stories of, people were we're telling the same thing down to the last day. The only thing I know to say is that if you want to come here and have a sit down with me, my door's open. We'll schedule something. We've had a ton of people come, and most people who do come by, 2 hours in, they're like, okay, it makes more sense now. This, I can see the shops out here fixing trucks. I can see you've got a team of people in your office working hard on this every day. And while, you know, this truck A may have a really bad month, or 15% of the trucks may have a bad month, over time is where this is. That's why we made it a 36-month term. That's why we talk about how it's a 12-month cycle in trucking. We've got usually 9 pretty good months and 3 crappy months. In the 3 crappy months, we can overperform sometimes. In the crappy months, we can underperform even what I expect. Because if you not only have a lower month or a holiday month and driver gets sick, driver quits, truck breaks down or something extra in those months, it makes it even worse. But I expected, and that's why I had addressed a lot last year. I expect every single year from the week before, the Monday of Thanksgiving week through the first week of January to be most of the time complete garbage. We've had payouts. There's people that have made money, right? It's not that everybody's losing money in those. We may have had a couple of trucks lose overall through that period, and a few this year have lost with repairs because they had to sit. Overall, returns aren't at expectation, even for what I would think during that time frame. But it's part of, this is a business, right? We can't guarantee a profit. I can tell people exactly what we've ran, exactly what we've seen over time, because we have a range out there. That's another thing that some guys have asked about. Hey, I see this range out there. I hit it 2 months and I've missed it 2 months so far. I think most of that's just guys coming in on the back end of a year, right? Or even a guy that joined in December. It's a great time to join for the tax benefit, but it's the worst time of the year to get your first settlement. It's not going to be great, especially if it started in a partial month. I try to communicate those things up front. But I think when you see that first statement and you've got a lot of money invested in a lot of trust that's been put out there, people just get a little bit like nervous about it. So I try to calm down. I try to reference back to the videos from last year of us talking about it, of this is normal. If you don't believe me that it's normal, go back. We talked about it way before it happened. Don't judge us off of any 1 month or 2 month period, or even 3 months when it's the winter time. Judge it over 12 months total. And I know that's asking trust, and I know that's asking a lot of faith. But if you didn't trust the system or what was out there or the people that have been getting paid since last May, right, then you wouldn't have come on board anyway. And so you're here, and I know things are tough. The communication's been bad at times because of just being inundated. But I want to put out there that we're not going anywhere. They would have to rip everything out of our hands. And even at that point, we've got some fail safes in place to make sure things go forward. Man, I've done a lot of talking, but I know we talked about, a lot of key points we wanted to talk about. So, and I, out of fear of this video going for an hour, because I know you've got stuff, man, going on. And I just appreciate your time and giving me a platform to talk. But anything else that you think is important? Like I say, I'm all ears.
Yeah, and I think being in the position I'm in, there's a lot of people that reach out to me asking questions about making an investment. There's people that reach out to me, kind of moaning and groaning about how their existing investment has done or is going. And it's opened my eyes to kind of realize, like, I did option 1, that the expectations for that are probably a lot different than someone who puts all their eggs into one truck on option 2 or 3. And they, my payouts dipped a little bit because the average of those 10 trucks, on the whole falls a little bit. But I don't see impacts from maintenance. I don't see impacts from drivers being out. I don't see impacts from any of that. But those people that go into option 2 and 3 have all of those extra factors to take into consideration. And I think it made me realize, like, the stuff I'm putting out there is not reflective of those other investments. And I think, I don't know, maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
I can only,
and I think that's tough for you to give. Yeah.
And it's hard for me to kind of explain to people the risk and the I don't know what expectations should really be like for these other.
Absolutely. Yeah, it puts you in a tough spot because you're having to give a response about something that you don't have a direct, investment or insight into P&Ls or how it works really even. So I appreciate that. And sorry, like I said, you've become kind of the spokesperson, unofficial,
Yeah,
but
and I
yeah,
get
to
a lot
speak to
of.
that.
I
Yeah.
think it's valuable for me. I wish, when I started, you guys were just, you guys just opened the doors to doing this, and I was the guinea pig, round. And I don't know. I'm happy to do this because if it's something that someone wants to do and there's a real person out there that can vouch for it, I am happy to be that person for them. Because I wish, I had that third source. Like I put a lot of trust in you guys, and luckily it's been great. But if it gives anybody like that little bit of confirmation that hey, this isn't some, you know, scam or whatever, I'm happy to do it. So I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Well, thank you for that.
The Yeah, so the portal, it kind of sounds like, and again, this is another thing that I didn't really have any gripes with because to be honest with you, as an option one person, I don't look at it. It's just a
Yeah.
payment at the end of the month. I don't need to see what deductions there were. It's just it is what it is. And again,
Yep.
that's kind of a frustration that I never experienced. Um, and I've had a few people show me. I'm like, yeah, I understand that that's frustrating, but I think being an engineer, I can understand how complicated building a system like that would be. And you guys, I think for the time schedule you were on, put it out. All right, so this is a pain point. I don't have the paid version of Zoom, so we got cut off here, but I was just kind of trying to sympathize with Wesley a little bit about the portal. Again, like I said, I don't use it that much. Option one people, you have one payment at the end of the month. You're not worried about expenses, anything like that. So it's something that I never experienced, but I've had several people reach out to me and show me their portals and why it has been frustrating them. Stuff has been missing, stuff has been incorrect. And like Wesley said in the recording, it's hard, it's complicated. Systems got to work together, they got to jive together. But all things considered, they did pump that thing out in a couple months after starting the program, and I was kind of shocked that they did that quickly. That being said, maybe it was a little too quickly. So I do like the idea that they're simplifying, going back to the PDF statements for now until they have everything buttoned up. But yeah, after a few minutes, I got back on with him and we got the recording going again. So here we are in the next segment.
If there's anything else specific, we're happy for that.
Yeah. So I guess the specific. Yeah, let's get into that because I think you talked a little bit about, you put out all these videos with Anton and Eric on their YouTube channel about, you kind of, that there's that seasonal cycle. And I think this is the first time it's easy to, theorize what that might look like in your head and have a certain expectation. And then when it actually gets there, it might be a little bit more painful than people expected. So,
Yep.
again, that probably led to an onslaught of questions and complaints and why is it this bad and why do I have a negative month or why do I have something that's way below what I expected?
Yep.
I mean, you've talked to it all already.
Yeah, I can elaborate on that. Yeah. Yeah. No, I can elaborate on that. It's the reason for me in trucking, even when we've been in the hottest markets of all time, you still dread that time frame because of the unknown in it is the biggest thing. We've had years. Sorry, my phone started ringing. We've had years where, between Christmas and New Year, were like the busiest week we had in the last 2 months of the year. People trying to get more out, get it on their books for the end of the year, but primarily everyone shut down during that period and closed. Unable to even ship or receive. So, then drivers like taking time off. So I've always said, the holidays are great, but I don't really feel super relaxed, during the holidays because it's a very tense moment in trucking just because of, it puts more emphasis on the time frame. Now, technically, we should have already been super successful through every year. Last year was a fairly flat year. I say fairly flat. It was the lowest we've had in like 4 or 5 years, right? It was a dramatic drop in revenue across the board in every segment of the industry, yet none of the expenses fell. None of them. Not one category that I can find out there down to parts, labor, insurance, fuel, driver pay. Nothing's gone back down. And so to operate and do it, at a decent level last year, I feel pretty good about, right? But then when you get into your first winter through it, especially somebody that maybe came on in November and they're like, what did I get into? Again, try to have those conversations when they happen. Somebody may have missed the videos, or maybe I missed the call. Somebody, came in and they closed immediately without me ever talking to them. Everything's going to be okay. I think it's majorly expected to have low months. Now, last year, even as a whole, I feel like there were some low months for certain trucks here and there. That's going to happen some too. Just randomly, there might be a low month, but look at it over a 36-month investment. Again, I don't want to give forward-looking statements, even though I don't think we're an investment firm, right? But I want to be honest and talk with people. Like we're here to help everyone make money off their asset. I feel really good about where things are going, and I think everyone's going to reap the benefits of that over time. But we're all focused on right here, right now, and we're already seeing improvements in revenue and volume of freight. So I think coming out of that winter and how we start seeing probably the first major improve. This month should be improved for most. Next month we'll start to see big jumps because of what we started having back to where we believe those averages should be. But I kind of want to address the averages a little bit too. We post out averages, and give guidance off of actual results that we have seen. If that changes or goes down during December, we'd not been through a December before, so we couldn't advertise how low that was. But even still, that average is the average expected over the course of 12 months and really over 36 months. So I want people to understand there's going to be months you're below that average. There should be months you're above that average if things go well and the truck's running and there's no issues. It's not that it should be in that average every month. And sometimes it's not going to be in that average for 3 months. It could be below it a few during the winter and other months. But I think, again, that's why these are 3-year contracts, because you're gonna see the worst and best in just a normal cycle in trucking throughout that time. It gives us, yes, the predictability of we've got the trucks for 3 years. We can commit them to customers. I know they're going to be there and not hopefully pulling them in and out. Moving them somewhere else and bringing trucks on, taking trucks off. That definitely helps us predict a lot more for how many drivers we need, how many customers we need in certain areas. And we're now being able to go out and expand. Finally, even not a lot of customers were adding new stuff, and we closed a couple big ones the past few months. We're finally now starting to see that pick up in areas where we need some gap fills, and customers are starting to get back to where we want it to be. That's where my time should be, is the vision of the customers, the making sure we've got the right customers and then the right people in the right seat in the offices too. You hear that all the time. And that everyone's exceeding and hitting at a high level. But I've not been able to do that the past couple of months. It's been very limited. It's been forced. I had a really good meeting with a customer yesterday. This one of the installers for our biggest customer, he controls everything that we do, right? If he's not happy, we're not happy. And he had a lot of great things to say about us, a lot of great things to say about our drivers, which just meant a lot for me. And obviously he was talking about how busy they are this year. All good things, but that's where the time should be focused, is maximizing revenue, given good reports, and that'll come. But I think important to say that the range of stuff we put out there is exactly that. It's a range. It's meant for guidance. It's not a rocket science. We still have a truck that's moving thousands of miles a month with a driver that's a human being. Anything can happen with those things, but it's our job when the problems happen to mitigate, and that no one's ever the wiser, hopefully, right? It's just like with customers. We have a problem in transit with a load, unless it's a major problem. They should never know there was a problem. We should find a way to make it happen and get it to the goal line and meet their required, delivery date. That's what we're good at, and what we've focused on for a long time, and why we probably are even in business, is because we're really good at taking care of people and doing what we say we're going to do, even when it's not comfortable. We had a job pop up out of nowhere. We had to deadhead trucks to get it over there. But if we didn't go and get this job kind of handled that popped up, we wouldn't have gotten asked to do the next few projects on the higher margin stuff that we get. So, yeah, that's kind of the big thing there, is to let everybody know that it's totally to be expected to have dips, and there's going to be segments of people that have dips even in the good months, um, because of the things that are out of our control. It's how we rebound from those things, right? You should never have multiple bad months in the summertime in a row. And those are the things that I think will start back gaining, trust and accountability and all those things. But we're still the same company at Rangeway that everyone came in and made a decision to come and be an asset owner to bring their truck on with us, or to at least purchase a truck we've got, or to do the option one. We're still the same company, same people, in good times, bad times, same guy. And hopefully we have the opportunity to keep building on that and grow confidence and hit some of the goals we have too. But I just thought it was important that we step back and fix some of the things first and work out some of the problems that we're seeing.
Yeah. And so I guess, is there, and we've talked about this before, like when do you pause taking more people on to kind of like collect yourself? Is that, or have you reached that point? And you're always out trying to get more business, but is there a point now where, because of these kind of pinch points with investors, are we gonna pause taking on new investors, just to kind of make sure that everyone that's under the umbrella is taken care of well, and their issues are sorted out, and move forward after systems are in place? Or is it the same old show with just walking to different systems?
So there's kind of two parts to that answer. In short, on the first part is we have already, in effect, paused adding new people this year. Some of it started just because I think January is probably a poor time to add new people, right? Even if I was looking to come in, January is probably not a great time. March is probably a really good time to do it. Now's the time we had planned to add a net effect of 25, 30 trucks. When we talked last year, we've added software and we've added people and we've got customers with demand, and we wanted to go into a busy season if we're going to add those trucks. We really don't want to add trucks. We might do some more if somebody wanted some in depreciation, but we don't want to do it towards the end of the year because of kind of what happened last year. This past year, we kind of had to do it because we're a business, we're new. You kind of got to, grow with what's growing. But yes, so it's kind of already paused. We had the past couple months maybe taken on one or two people at most, and they were people that we'd already been talking with months in advance. However, if we get things fixed where we're at right now from a data standpoint, the profits and the profitability are going to go up. I believe that. So I don't think there's any impact on that by adding some new people. But it does get to a point of where we decide we don't have to add 30 trucks this year to be successful. Now at Rangeway, we've kind of put it in a place where we really need to add 10 or 12 but to keep up with what we've staffed and what we've done and just the volume that I see coming with the customers that we have our core put in. But most of my time's we're not out. I'm not doing calls with new potential people that often. I maybe have done 2 or 3 in the past couple months, right? That is not where my focus is. If it happens, it happens. And if we get to a point where we want to push and add a small group in a short period of time, I think that may be feasible and reasonable to hit the bigger goal, because I think it lifts everyone up in that. But my sole focus right now is making sure we've got the right freight, making sure that all of our software and issues there are fixed going forward, from a reporting and a data standpoint, and then make sure that we've got the communications and everything in place we're supposed to. Again, we're looking at a couple little options on that Rangeway that I think will help that long term. So it's kind of a mixed answer, right? I understand that was kind of walking the line a little bit, but I don't want to say that we're not going to add any people at all this year, but I want everyone to know that my focus is solely on getting this straight first. If the right people come along, it'd be great. I would prefer we never have to go and advertise, or which we really never advertise, but we haven't done YouTube videos, in a while. We may do one soon. I don't know, but I'm looking at some things to kind of give some access to me and Rangeway and things on a monthly basis too, right? That I think would be quality for the investors that have bought, their own trucks and brought them on as asset owners. But And if it benefits and it adds more trucks down the road, great. But that's not the focus of what I want to do from a communication standpoint, and improving some of how I get that information out, because Rangeways where everyone is looking to for the performance, right?
Yep.
And so I don't take that lightly. We troubleshoot all the time on things we can do to get better here, improve literally every facet, right? Quality of hire, the speed of hire, the speed of fixing these breakdowns. Like there's a lot of things there, but we need to add a small amount or readjust kind of the focus on where the goals are. We don't have to add 30, which was the original focus, I guess, to say for this year. And there's different ways to go about that. But that's kind of where it is right now. But again, my main focus is getting this stuff fixed and caught up first and foremost. But then my focus needs to be on Rangeway, right? We need to get this, fixed on the communication side, get everybody's data accurate, start getting reports out, hit those goals. But my focus needs to be on, the trucking company lifting up 20% in revenue on every truck, because I think that's attainable for most trucks from what my expectations are.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and I guess the one issue we mentioned it very early on was the factoring kind
yeah,
of that's the kind of exposed side that the business has. And I know that all the option one investments go towards that. Yeah, could you kind of like explain how that works? Like obviously an investor pays in, you kind of pay off the factoring company, but how does revenue to the investor work there? And then also explain the kind of like why you're uncomfortable about the factoring company you're working with.
yeah. I think starting with the issue first, right, with them, and then kind of what our thought of the solution is
Yep.
so, to get super high or in the weeds for a second, freight factoring, right, is with small and medium sized companies is pretty much exclusive. Almost every company does it. You essentially haul all your loads for today. So there's 20 loads that delivered. You get all of your invoices and bill of ladings where they delivered in. You upload that to the factoring company. They advance you that money to operate on, because when you started the company, when we started this factoring company 4 or 5 years ago, right, it was just the best way to not have to wait 40 days, 45 days for customers to pay you the cash. You get the money to go operate, pay the insurance down payments when you start, all the things. When you start with a factoring company, it is a pretty necessary evil in today's times. Unless you've got 1 or 2 trucks, you might be okay without it. Or you can do quick pay with all these brokers, but it costs a fortune in fees to do. So you sell these guys their invoices. They look at all these people. They hold individual credit lines for every customer that we have, and they decide how much exposure they as a company are willing to take on every single A, B, C, D customer. Now, it's recourse back on us. If our customer doesn't pay them, that gets taken back on us in 90 days anyway. But they still are very particular always about who they let you do business with, how much they let you float with each one. Well, factoring as a whole in the past year has taken, there's been factoring companies go out of business, which I didn't think was even possible because of the way they do money. But supposedly a year ago, when things got really bad in the freight industry, they had a bunch of 1 to 5 truck companies that went out of business. They had bought potentially fraudulent, but some bad invoices with them. They had issues going out and collecting on these things. Some of them they had over advanced people and loaned them money. They now are holding the bag on. But real in the way it impacts us, yeah, these people started getting audited. They have their own lines of credit at the banks that allow them to fund us money. They started getting audited by their banks, saying you've got a quality standard of paperwork, of verifying this information, of triple checking everything, and you're not holding to this, because everything had been really good for 3 years and people paid their bills and everybody was making money and they really didn't care. Well, it started that kind of effect about a year ago. It really didn't start where we were seeing much impact, because we've been with the same people for a long time. They're based here locally. We had a great working relationship for a long period of time. They let us buy apparently on some rules that they are not rules, but policies that they had, that they just kind of let us, not have to play by the same rules for 3 years. So we knew none of these rules even existed. And then all of a sudden, they started enforcing rules that we've never had to enforce before, and have come up with new rules and policies that make it very, very difficult to operate. So you think we're in a growth mode, we're in add more direct customer mode, but they see direct customers as higher risk. So if I add ABC Metals or make up some fictitious, there's probably a company named that. So some fictitious company that I go and I see as being a good business for us to do business with, they're offering for us to do business with them. I have to go and get approval that they can be approved with the factoring line, with the factoring company. They give them a total at which their maximum they can expose to them in any given, turn of the receivables. And we then start doing business with them. They went through a period where they would not add any of our new customers. And in a period where adding new customers was really, really hard, right? These guys, they could go and get any company to haul for them. They're choosing us because it fits a greater game down the road, or they feel like we'll service them on a higher customer service level, or just to get us to do the freight nobody else wants, or to do the oversized stuff that typically they have issues with. They didn't have to come and use us. And these are big, big companies. This isn't we're going haul for mom and pops that's got 5 employees and $3 million in revenue. Some of these companies are massive, and we could not get credit lines approved with them. And so it started impacting us. We started floating receivables for these customers because we had no other option. It was either take the business or not. So that kind of put us in a place where, like, okay, we're kind of okay with this, but we can't do this with everybody, right? We couldn't do it with everyone and just switch at one time because it takes about double the cash to do it. So we're talking a couple $1 million to convert if we did it that way. So second problem is our existing credit lines with people that were already out there. They started going in and lowering about 20-25% of the exposure they would allow, because you got to think they're looking at an overall exposure. They may have 10 companies hauling for the same customer. They may have $1 million, at the end of the day. So there's a lot of factors that play into it, but all their risk tolerance is they have to, we went from sending in paperwork and never getting rejections to every single day now we have 3 to 8 rejections. They want, there can't be a thumb, in the picture, there can't be a thumb on the edge of it. There can't be a clipboard across the top. Every single letter of every line on this bill of lading has to be legible. We're asking drivers out there that are in the hot, the cold, the rain, the snow to get in their truck. Yeah, well, we've got a mobile app, right? They get in there and take a mobile image of it, but the thumbs are in it, so the paperwork doesn't blow away, or because they're in a rush because they've got to go do their next load. They're on a clock all day, right? That's they've got so many hours they can do. So if they sit here and try to take 6 pictures of this to get it perfect, well, they'll submit it, send it in. We kind of triage it. If we can read and everything's legible, sure of who signed it, they accepted it, all the products there, we send it in. Well, it is really hard to do that at a high level, but even the ones we feel we meet the requirements with, we're still getting rejected all the time. Second problem is they're having to verify with everybody, every rate, with every customer, and all these new things that, again, my AR person, it's spending 5 hours a day with this when it should be less than 2. Second piece of this is our software is designed to do all of our accounts receivable for us. So if we bring accounts receivable in-house, it's all automated. That part functions. We still use it because we have to circumvent the software to send this stuff to the factoring company every day to kind of exist. Well, so now we're at the place of we've got lower available, purchasing power with customers we've been doing business with for 8-10 years. We're not being able to add new customers. And we're having paperwork issues nonstop that they say is our fault. And I argue with them, you go out there and do all this hard work and take the pictures, but that's a whole different thing. The unpredictability and the instability of these guys can do whatever they want. They could decide tomorrow to say, we don't want Rangeway as a customer anymore. We don't want this big of a client, because we're medium, again, client with them. Been with them a long time. But there's days they just were like, hey, we're not funding you. Hey, we changed the rule yesterday. You've got 1 bad BOL out of 35. And instead of denying that, we're just not going to fund any of your money. So when they start saying, okay, we've got control, we've got things we can do, we're making it work right now, but it puts, paranoia in the back of my head of like, what happens? And if we're going to grow this year without adding a bunch of trucks, if we're just going to grow the revenue with the trucks we already have and add some key customers, they're going to prevent it from doing it. Right. I mean, they have the ability to. One of the big customers that we started with, we started It took me 3 weeks to get them a credit line approved. Within 3 weeks after that, they had given us 15,000. 2 more weeks after that, 50,000, and now there's 115,000 with this one customer. They let us do business every month. But 3 months before that, they said they did not have any credit worthiness. How do I predict that? Like
Yeah.
I told them to get, literally, it was like, get in your car, drive down. They're like 5 minutes from them. I was like, go sit there for 3 hours and tell me how many truckloads you see coming out. It's a huge plant. They got 30 something facilities across the country. Like, but we deal with that on a large level, small level, and then we'll even do all the right things. We go and we get people approved with credit lines before we haul, and then haul the freight. And then it's like, well, you didn't do, we don't have an agreement showing X, so we're not going to buy those. And it's like, well, you turned on the credit line. That's our key. We check to make sure they have a valid credit line. We haul the freight, do the work, and then now all of a sudden you can't buy it. And so it creates a massive backlog on the back office to have to do all this extra work. Because then too, like if 2 weeks in, we have to haul some freight broker loads right on the backhaul network. If a broker says, I've got a problem with this paperwork, that comes in as a dispute. Used to, we'd have 3 days or so to fix those disputes. Now they just immediately charge it back to us. And they hold that we have so many disputes against us from opening up new credit or paying us our reserves or, whatever these things are. So there's a lot of things out there, but I think from what I hear and understand, this has started happening with every freight factoring company, right? It's not me picking on ours. So if they ever see this video, it's not just ours. And we actually have a pretty good customer service rep that goes to bat for us all the time, but she just got somebody telling, hey, no.
Taking orders.
So I think there is yeah. And so, she's like, hey, I'm going to die on this bridge with y'all, but I'm going to fight, for you. All that said and done, it keeps our predictability in a crazy spot. I'm having to call these people all the time, fight. Again, another problem that we have to deal with, fight with these people to figure out and I've asked numerous times, like, hey, I need a list of what your policies are that you want me to have my person go by, because it changes it every day. I can't keep up with it, much less can she. And still not received that one time. So we're trying to leave the factoring world completely eventually, right? And we're trying to chip away at that. But the best way to do it would be one lump sum and be done. And I think we had a pretty good start on that with the option one last year. It slowed down for no real reason to my understanding. That was before we were having portal issues or before we were having all this stuff. I think it's just time of year and seasonality, right? Because we had some people that have been in the option ones like you that immediately came in and were like, absolutely, we're in. We've seen how this worked. We know that you've done what you're supposed to. Sign me up for another one. Because we're only offering a limited amount of these, right? Like once we have enough to get rid of these people, we'll never offer option one again unless there's another reason that comes up in the future, like,
yeah, it's really just
buying something else or buying something out. It's very specific. And we did all the math. We did, troubleshooting, comparing it against other options to try to do this. And it made sense for us because once they're out, not only are we saving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in fees that they charge us, but with the growth that we just already have accomplished, that number goes up even more. And them limiting us can be a bigger problem too. So
right.
We offered that out there as people buying access to the revenue off of existing trucks that we already have on the road. It gives that predictability, right? I think the old option one was 10% over 24 or 30 months, whatever it was.
Years, yeah.
This one we offered it 8% of the revenue over 36 months, to where it was a little bit longer period, but a little bit less of the revenue. The numbers still kind of make sense there. If an individual wanted to do it, it's $40,000 and expected returns over 80,000 just with what we've done. Again, we can't commit and I can't promise profits, right? But this is a pretty, safe. I think that you could speak really to it, right? There's ebbs and flows, ups and downs, but they're small versus asset ownership that go up and down.
Certainly less volatile than what I've seen other people.
Yeah. And so, there's people that love that. And I think it's a good fit for a lot of people that want to be involved somehow and see things are awesome. I think it speaks to, people like you that had good years last year, that people still are interested in something like that. We would like to close that out, right? We need another 10 or 12, 15, whatever it is. I haven't looked in a few weeks because we've been focused on this, to probably get to where we can just wipe this completely out and be done forever. But again, I'm not out pushing it right now because we're fixing issues first. that is a top two issue for me, though. In my opinion, it's the one thing that could shut the whole thing down in theory, right? We could go find another factoring company, but it would take, if they cut us off and shut us down, and we've talked with a couple of people about being that fallback if something happens. When you look at broadly that the whole industry is doing similar stuff, are you going to go somewhere else and be stuck for 12 months and have the same issues is the problem if we ever went to that and had to keep some level of a factoring company involved. We'd like to just bring it in house.
Yep.
We have all the control. We do our own credit, uh, searches. There's plenty of tools out there that we can use that make sure we're not taking on bad debt, because that's what the factoring company is supposed to be there for. They're supposed to say, hey, these guys don't pay their bills. We've got this massive amount of data. These guys do not pay their bills and they're not a good customer for you. And then we take that and say, yeah, probably not worth the risk. Or we just give them $5,000 and test them out and see how it goes for a period of time. But it's turned to just shut everybody down. It does not hurt them. Yeah, it doesn't hurt them to say no to everything. No skin off of their back, because they think we'll just find a different way and they'll keep making their consistent, predictable revenue. And they've grown, right? They've added people in 21, 22. And so I think they're having a shuffle and they're changing softwares too. Go figure. So there's, more pieces probably that are impacting how they have to do their part. But that's really what that was for. And if we close that out, that would be what we finish with that. So maybe that's a good explanation of why that existed and what it was for, to kind of get in there of what the impact is. So people understand that, there's other battles and fights we're out there fighting on that impact everyone on their behalf, on our behalf. We did an insurance renewal in February, right? We have to sing and dance every year to get the renewal done. And it always comes down to the last minute. There's always something that happens. But we ended up, having a really good renewal and closing a good renewal on insurance, paid them their down payment. All the things that it takes to stay functional. We're hard at work on all those things all day, every day. So, it's not that I'm sitting, here and looking at people's messages, not wanting to respond to back to the communication thing. There's a lot there, but that's why I feel that we need a better way to make sure we're communicating too.
Yep. It's exciting. I think to me, it's a good sign that you're kind of, all right, take a step back, simplify things a little bit. Maybe the idea was a little undeveloped and caused more problems than it solved. I think, everyone's seeing truly how tough going through a winter is. Lessons learned. People have different expectations now. But I think I still have full confidence in you guys, and knowing where the pain points are, it almost seems like an option one investor is helping solve an issue for you to only grow revenue for everybody else. So
absolutely. And we've had a couple people come, considering making sizable contributions into that. I haven't had the time to spend into that I probably should have, of making sure that they're comfortable and wanting to come in, because I've been trying to fix some problems. But I think it's something that should get some time, because they've seen the value in it and know some people that have had success and vetted us out a little bit, or else they probably wouldn't consider doing it either. But that would be a key piece, is having a couple 2-3 people wipe the rest of it out. That then makes sense for us, and it limits any potential risk going forward with that factoring kind of facility that we use. So I know it looks like we're 4.5 minutes left.
Yeah, we're coming up on our time.
I love the Zoom.
I don't want to cut this one off again, but thanks for setting aside the time. I know we're almost over an hour and a half into this, but hopefully, like we were chatting a little bit, maybe we do this kind of on a more regular basis to talk about recent issues, because now at this point we're kind of talking back a couple months and trying to backtrack, but on a quarterly, bi-monthly, whatever, something like that, where
I love that. Like I say, I'm trying to put something that will hopefully give people a video every month. But I'd love to come and talk with you as well, because I think people just naturally gravitated to yours. And I don't know how the back ends of the internet work, but I'm sure it's tagging somehow compared to whatever. And that's awesome. I think it's good. Even when people have issues, I hate you have to deal with them, but at least people have what they feel to be an outlet to discuss it. And that's what free market and all this stuff's about, that I personally believe in. But
just a humble lad recording videos in my basement. So for some reason people.
There you go.
All right. Well,
yeah. Well, if you're good with it, I know we got 3 minutes and 15 seconds left. I'd like to kind of end on where I see the freight market this year, because I think it's important, just as a general speaking, and I'll go really quick.
Yep.
Our customers that we were talking with, that I talk with every day, and I met with yesterday, they've got more on the books than they've seen in the past 2 years. Now, how that comes to fruition and what it does, I can't promise or make any guarantees. I can only relay what I hear. But some of these high volume shippers that I watch that move, a bunch of loads out, from metal coils to, steel and pipe and all these things. We went through, they do a 3-tier system at one of these people, right? Low cost, mid cost, high cost. And we're in the bottom tier. And we would always, it's not crazy rates high, but they're, consistent. In that 3rd tier, though, over the past year, we maybe get offered 4 or 5 loads a week. And when we would go to grab it in their system, by the time we'd get in there to click on it, the thing would already be gone. And we really use them as a backhaul network every now and then. But I would say it started picking up, about a month ago. We started seeing 15, 20 offers a week. In the last 2 weeks, there's been like 1,500 come into our portal. And these things are going to another company that then uses that and ships out again to their end user, or whatever that they make or build, or if it's car manufacturers or roofing or whatever they make it out of. To me, that means the big guys that are typically at a cheaper price point have passed up on that freight, and it's now either they've got too much business, or they know their rate's too low now, and they're in there trying to raise their rates into our tier. Something's changing there. I still think it's up in the air from an economy standpoint of when people start making these capital purchases. Everyone's trying to predict the economy and predict when interest rates go down to go and spend, because they don't want to, put $20 million into a project right now at 8.5% interest and it be 6% in 3 months. And they're like, crap, we should have changed that. I think there's some people predicting that, but I also think there's so much demand that's out there that people are starting to take on more levels of inventory, which then makes freight rates go up. But when our best and most solid customers are doing more business and have more, one of the guys I talked with, that's kind of the guy that gets all the pricing and puts the projects together. Yeah, he's like, I've got more stuff hit my desk in the last 3 or 4 days than have hit in a couple of years. So feel really good about that. Again, it doesn't promise that we still have to do our part. We have to operate it. We got to keep good, solid drivers in the trucks, get guys out that aren't a good fit, and then perform and report and show, that. So we're excited to do that, man. And again, I appreciate the opportunity you gave me to come on and talk for a bit. I thought it was super important to take the time out to do it. So I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I think it's probably going to cut us off here, but
we're really close.
We'll touch
Hope
base.
you have a good day and safe travel.
Let's try and do something in the next month or so if you got the time.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
All right. Wesley, take care.
Talk soon. Thanks, Ed.
Later.
All right.
All right, so that kind of wrapped it up today. I hope everyone takes this as a somewhat mature move on Wesley's part. I know, they're a company that never had to deal with investors before. They're a company that is scaling. So I can definitely sympathize with the pain points that they're experiencing, and at the same time, I'm also sympathetic of all the investors that have been reaching out to me, kind of explaining, you enter into a contract with a certain expectation, and it's not quite what you thought it would be. I'm not sure. I'm not going to say that this is a bad investment, but maybe it's not what people thought it would be. Especially for option 2 and 3 folks who's, the trucks are volatile, right? Like you got breakdowns, you got drivers to worry about. It's definitely not the experience not everyone's experience is my experience. I think the videos that I've been putting out make it seem almost like, this investment's just an ATM where you you get cash out every month. And my experience is not reflective of that. So yeah, please don't take anything that I do as like a recommendation to you for what you should expect. I know only what I know. I cannot vouch for anybody else. But yeah, I hope this provided some value and comfort, or maybe just eased frustration a bit for you guys. Wesley and I are going to try and do this on a monthly basis. I don't know if it's just going to be a recorded session like this. The idea is kicking around of maybe there's a kind of like a town hall thing where I'm the moderator and you guys would feed me questions that I can, present to him and have him answer. So let me know what you think. If you guys would rather a town hall type experience or just prefer the open discussion like we had today, let me know in the comments. But yeah, well, I will be providing an update once I get paid this month. They did kind of shift their terms a little bit, and for the sake of providing people accurate payments and accurate data, they're pushing back payments to 30 days after the service period. So for the month of February, I won't get paid till the end of March. So yeah, I won't have a payment for at least a week and a half, I'm expecting. So I will put another video out then, but thanks everyone.